Hello and welcome to Unclench Your Jaw with Nimu. I am Nimu, strength and conditioning coach, somatic and yoga therapist. Also, as I have told you many times, the mom to one incredible daughter, although she'll probably tell you she's the one who's looking after me. We also have a dog who believes every walk is the greatest adventure ever invented, and a cat who's quietly convinced the rest of us are simply members of her household staff. I am a friend to many, secretly the family's favorite relative, and of course, according to my brother, his favorite sister. And before anyone decides to fact check, I am his only sister. So, and that doesn't matter. Let's just stick with what I'm telling you. Anywho, thank you for spending this time with me. And whether you're listening to me on your morning walk, driving home from work, making dinner, or just taking a few moments for yourself, I am glad that you're here. Now, before we begin, let's do what we always do. Let's just pause and notice where your body is making contact with whatever is supporting you, whether it's a chair, whether it's a bed, a stool, whether you're standing. Feel your feet on the floor. Take a slow, comfortable breath in, and then just let that breath leave your body gently. Notice your shoulders. Notice your breathing. And of course, unclench your jaw. Now, today, I'd like to ask you a question. How do you know when you're making the right decision? How do you know when you're making the right decision? Have you ever stood at a crossroads in your life wondering which path to take? And maybe it was about deciding whether you should stay in a relationship or you should leave, whether you should stay in the place you're at or move countries or cities, whether it's to say yes to an opportunity that has suddenly come your way, whether it's to become a parent, whether it's to, should I stay or should I go? Da, 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 da. Anyway, perhaps you made a list. Maybe you weighed up the pros and the cons. You asked your friends what they thought. You spoke to your family. You read articles. You know, they're the people. What is it? There's a type something, ing, whatever they're called, that are very motaratara. They will read articles, they will do experiments, they will read scientific journals just to make a decision. Maybe you watched videos, or as people have started doing, you ask strangers on the internet whether you should stay in the relationship or not. But anyway, you are looking for anyone who would tell you what to do. And I think many of us have become experts at gathering opinions, but somewhere along the way, we stopped asking ourselves one very important question. What do I think? Or perhaps an even gentler question, what do I feel? For many of us, trusting ourselves isn't difficult because we lack wisdom. It's difficult because we've spent years believing that someone else must know better, that someone else has the answer, that someone else can see something we've missed. I know I do that when I go house hunting. I always bring someone along with me in case I miss something and they see it. So, or maybe that's a good thing. And while advice can be incredibly valuable, there comes a point where every decision eventually returns to the same place, and that is you. And whether that's to your values or your hopes, your fears, your life, it comes back to you. So today's episode isn't about becoming someone who never doubts themselves, because I don't think anything like that exists. It's about learning to hear your own voice again. And not that loud voice of fear or the one of expectation, but the quieter voice that's been there all along. And that's the one that asks, does this feel true for me? Does this feel true for me? Here's the thing, perhaps trusting yourself isn't even about finding certainty. Maybe it's about learning to stay with yourself, even when life feels uncertain. Just being able to sit with yourself and be comfortable with that. I want us to explore what that means, what trusting yourself means. And we're going to start. You're going to find, I'm going to confess something to you guys. I'm still trying to find my footing when it comes to how my podcast will work, and what works and what doesn't work. And I do take people's advice. I do trust myself, but I also do take people's advice as it comes to the podcast, because also you're the ones who are listening, so it makes sense to take advice from you. So one of the things I've decided I'm going to be doing is naming the chapters, which also kind of lets you know what's happening, right? So today we'll start with chapter 1, and chapter 1 is the story. So I'd like you to meet Ambane. Ambane is 33 years old. He's thoughtful, he's kind, and he's the sort of person who actually listens more than he speaks. He's reliable and he's easygoing. It's a Sunday afternoon. The whole family has gathered for his grandmother's birthday. The garden is alive with conversation. Children are chasing one another across the grass. Someone is turning some nice nyama choma on the barbecue. I've started drooling. If you know me, you know my love for meat. Hey, kwanza missing that maji and anti-theft in Nairobi. By the way, someone in Malindi needs to start learning how to make maji and anti-theft, because where I'd be a casto daily. Anyway, his aunts are laughing over stories that they've told 100 times before. You know how those aunts are. Uncles, of course, are probably arguing about politics or football as though the outcome depends on them. You know, it's that kind of afternoon that just feels comfortably familiar. Ambana is carrying a tray of drinks when his aunts smile at him. And she says, "So," and she says it with a grin, with a grin. And we all know that grin. When you're of a certain age, there's a grin that comes with your aunties. And it could be one of two questions. When are you getting married? Or when are you having babies? Those are the questions they ask. And so the aunt, of course, says, Ambane, when are you going to make us stop waiting? And the whole table erupts with laughter. It reminds me of my mom and her sisters. Man, they were terrors. They are terrors. They'll ask the giggling or the raucous laughter. It makes me happy. Anyway, so his cousin nudges him and says, she's asking you about the wedding, man. Someone else joins in. Hey, so you've been with Anjiro for how long now? You've been together for years. His mom smiles quietly and, of course, adds, I'd love to see my son settled. Grandmother reaches across the table and pats his hand. Before I'm too old to dance at your wedding, make this thing happen. So everyone laughs again. Ambane smiles. He makes a joke and the conversation moves on. But something inside him doesn't move on. Later that afternoon, him and Wanjiro are walking back to the car together, and she slips her hand into his. She says, you know they mean well. And he says, I know. She smiles, but I do think about it sometimes. And of course, he looks at her and says, think about what? Getting married, of course. No pressure or expectations, just honesty. She's not pressuring him. She's just being honest about that. She's actually thinking about this thing called marriage. Ambane smiles and says, yeah, so do I. And he's not lying. He has thought about it many times. He does think about it. At least once a day he'll think about it. Now, they sit in the car for a moment, just quietly before the engine starts. Neither of them is saying anything. Then Wanjiro asks, do you ever imagine what the future looks like for us? Ambane opens his mouth to answer. Nothing comes out because every time he imagines saying yes, something inside him goes quiet. Not frightened or excited, just quiet. He tells himself, pengine, maybe it's cold feet, huh? Everyone gets nervous. See, people get nervous, right? They get nervous, don't they? And over the next few weeks, the conversations keep happening. His friends begin talking about bachelor parties. His mother starts sending him photos of wedding venues that she's just happened to come across. And I'm doing that thing people do with their tunini inverted commas, happened to come across. His colleagues ask, so when is the big day? Everywhere Ambane goes, people seem more certain about his future than he is. One evening, During the week, Wanjiro is making dinner, and without looking up, she smiles and says, My friend got engaged today. He says, Really? Okay. She continues to stir the pot. I think we're ready to. And the room becomes very still. Ambane looks at her. He loves her, and he loves her a lot. He knows she'd be a wonderful wife. He knows they'd probably have a good life together, so why? Why does his chest suddenly feel heavy and his breathing shallow? Why does every part of him want to say, can we just slow down? But instead, he smiles, reaches across the kitchen counter, squeezes her hand, and quietly says, I think so too. That night, long after Wanjiro has fallen asleep, Ambana is lying awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of rain outside, and there's a question circling his mind. A question he keeps pushing away because he doesn't like the answer it might hold. And finally, he whispers, and he's whispering to himself, am I just saying yes because it's what I want, or because it's what everyone expects? Chapter 2, Making Sense of It. So let's stay with Ambane for a moment, lying there awake, staring at the ceiling, asking himself a question that he isn't quite ready to answer. Am I saying yes because it's what I want, or because it's what everyone expects? And I wonder, have you ever asked yourself something similar? The details may be different, but the question is often the same. Is this my choice? Or have I slowly started living someone else's idea of the life I should have? It's such a difficult question to answer. Question to answer. We're surrounded by voices. Many voices that began long before we're old enough to make our own decisions, whether it's our teachers, our parents, friends, culture, tradition, social media, which has now become a huge part of our lives, whether it's people we admire people who love us. Every one of those voices has something valuable to offer. The people in Ambana's life, they're not trying to pressure him. They love him. Their intentions are full of love. But love doesn't always mean someone knows what's right for your life. Only you live inside your skin. Only you wake up every morning in your body. Only you carry your hopes, your fears, your values, your dreams. Only you. So there comes a moment when every one of us has to learn the difference between listening to advice and handing over our authority. And they're not the same thing. Advice says, here's what I think. Authority says, only you can decide. And sometimes I think we confuse the two. We collect opinions from everyone around us, almost hoping someone will remove the responsibility of choosing. Listen, I feel this most intensely in restaurants that have 20 gajillion pages to their menu. Have one meat dish, one fish dish, and if you must, a vegan one. Finished. There's no need to do for 20 pages that have, okay, maybe, 20 pages of nyama. That we can do. These are the things, they don't have to be many. Anyway, making your own decisions can feel frightening. What if I get it wrong? What if I disappoint people? What if everyone else was right? And these are deeply human questions. And here's something I'd love for you to remember. Self-trust isn't the absence of doubt, right? It isn't the absence of doubt. People who still trust themselves still question their decisions. They still seek advice. They change their minds. By the way, someone once said, what's the point of having a mind if you don't change it? I love that thing. What's the point of having a mind if you don't change it? And I think that was a very clever someone. I just don't remember the name of the person who said it. Anywho, the difference is they do not disappear from the conversation. So they have all this doubt and all the rest of it, but they don't disappear from the conversation. Their own voice still has a seat at the table. Imagine sitting around a large dinner table. Every chair is occupied. One chair belongs to your family, one to your friends, one to your partner, one to your colleagues, another one to society. That other one over there, opposite to you, is fears. Then the one right next to you is hopes. Now imagine your own chair. For many of us, that's the chair we've quietly stood up from. We've been so busy listening to everyone else that we've forgotten to sit back down. And maybe learning to trust yourself isn't about silencing every other voice. Pengina, maybe it's about remembering that your voice deserves a place in the conversation too. And not because it's always right, but because it's yours, because it's your voice. And if you never listen to it, how will you ever get to know it? Chapter 3. Where did I learn that? Let's leave ambane for a moment. Instead, let's meet another ambane. Ambane, 6-year-old ambane. It's a Saturday morning. He's standing at the cereal aisle of the supermarket with his dad. Rows and rows of brightly colored boxes stretch above his head, right? His dad smiles and says, "Go on, you can choose one." Ambane's face lights up. He slowly walks along the shelves, carefully looking at every box. Finally, he reaches for one with a bright orange bird on the front of it. And he says, "I like this one." His dad looks at it and laughs and says, "Oh no." He reaches past Ambane and picks a different box. "This one's better." And he does this without thinking. Ambane nods and says, "Okay." It's a very tiny moment, right? One that neither of them will maybe even remember. But childhood is full of tiny moments. What do you want to wear today? No, you'll be too cold. What game do you want to play today? No, let's play this instead. What do you think? Okay, that's not quite right. Before we go any further, I want to remind you again of something very important. This isn't about blaming parents. Because parents guide, they protect, they make decisions children simply aren't ready to make. That's part of loving a child. But while children are learning how to tie their shoelaces or cross the road safely, they're also learning something much quieter. And this is whether their own thoughts, their preferences, their feelings, their instincts, whether these things have a place. You may have grown up in a family where decisions were made for you because life was busy. The adults around you believed they always knew best, and maybe they did. Or perhaps you grew up hearing phrases like "Don't be silly, you're fine, you're overreacting, that's nothing to worry about." And most of the time, those words weren't cruel. They were spoken with love, with reassurance, with good intentions. But imagine hearing them often enough. Slowly, you'll begin to wonder if your own experience can be trusted. If you say, "I'm scared," and someone says there's nothing to be scared of, you don't stop feeling afraid, do you? You just simply learn not to trust your fear. Or if you say something like, "I don't like that," and someone replies, "You'll get used to it," you don't stop having preferences. You just become less likely to express them. So little by little by little, something begins to happen. Instead of asking, "What do I think?" you begin to ask, "What should I think?" Instead of asking, "What feels true for me?" you begin asking, "What will make everyone else happy?" Can you hear the difference? One question builds a relationship with yourself. The other one slowly moves you away from yourself. And because these lessons are learned so early, they often follow us into adulthood without us even noticing. We ask our friends where we should live. We ask strangers on the internet whether we're making the right decision. We ask everyone else if our feelings make sense because somewhere along the way we stopped believing our own voice was enough. The beautiful thing is the voice never disappeared. It simply became very quiet because it learned no one was listening. The wonderful news, though, is relationships can always be rebuilt, even the relationship you have with yourself. It doesn't happen by suddenly becoming confident. It happens by asking one small question over and over again. What do I think? Not what should I think, but what feels true for me. Because every time you ask that question, you're inviting yourself, you're inviting your own voice back into the conversation. And I believe that that's where self trust begins. Chapter 4, A New Way of Seeing. If you've recognized a little bit of yourself in ambane, or even a lot, I'd like to offer you another way of thinking about your self trust. For a long time, Ambane believed trust was something you either had or you didn't. He imagined that confident people simply woke up knowing exactly what they wanted, that they never doubted themselves, never questioned their decision, or lay awake wondering if they'd make a mistake. But the more he paid attention, the more he started realizing something. The people he admired weren't free from uncertainty. They simply weren't waiting for certainty before they lived. Can you hear the difference? We have been taught that confidence comes first. That once we feel confident, we'll make the decision, we'll speak up, we'll be able to say no, we'll be able to ask for what we need. But really, life rarely works that way. More often, confidence comes afterwards, right? After you've had the difficult conversation, after you've said no, after you've trusted yourself once, then twice, then the third time. Self-trust isn't built by self-trust isn't built by thinking. It's built by experience. Think about any close friendship. Trust didn't appear overnight. It grew. One promise kept, one honest conversation, one moment of reliability after another. The relationship you have with yourself is no different. Every time you ignore what you know to be true, that relationship weakens a little. Every time you listen, even in the smallest way, it grows stronger. Maybe that's why the smallest decisions matter so much. Choosing to rest when you're tired. Saying things like, actually, I'd rather not. Admitting, hey, that hurt, right? Changing your mind when new information arrives. They're ordinary moments, but they're quietly telling your nervous system, I can rely on myself. I often think about self-trust like learning to hear a friend in a crowded room. So in a bash, someone is trying to talk to you from across the room and you can't really hear. Everything else is loud, other people's voices, music, conversation, the noise. So you're straining to hear them. You miss half of what you're saying, but the more time you spend listening, the easier it becomes to recognize their voice. Your own voice, I think, is like that, right? Your own inner voice is like that. It isn't absent. It's been competing with the expectations, opinions, fears, the noise of everyday life. It doesn't need to become louder. The rest of the noise simply needs to become quieter. And maybe that's why slowing down feels so important. It doesn't solve every problem, but it makes it easier to hear yourself. So Mbane finally realized something that changed everything. He didn't need everyone to agree with his decisions. He simply needed to understand why he was making them, whether people approved or not. And that doesn't mean every decision became easy, because it didn't. Some conversations are uncomfortable. Some people will be disappointed. Some days he's questioned himself over and over again. But something had changed. Even in the uncertainty, he stayed beside himself. He no longer abandoned his own voice the moment someone else spoke. And perhaps that's what trusting yourself really is. It's not about believing you'll always make the perfect decision, because what is the perfect decision? But believing that whatever happens, you won't stop listening to yourself. Because when life becomes uncertain, the safest place to come home to isn't certainty, it's yourself. The pause. Before we continue, I'd like to invite you to pause for a moment, not to make a decision, not to figure anything out, but just to become curious. As you've been listening today, perhaps you've been thinking about a decision you're facing, or perhaps you've realized there have been moments where you've quietly ignored yourself. Now, without judgment, just notice what comes to mind. And if you have a notebook nearby, or you'd like to open the Notes app on your phone, I'd like to invite you to complete this sentence. I know I'm abandoning myself when. I know I'm abandoning myself when. ... Answer hapo. Take your time. Don't think about what the right answer should be. Simply notice what comes first. And maybe it's like, I know I'm abandoning myself when I say yes, even though I want to say no, or when I keep asking everyone else what I should do, or perhaps when I tell myself my feelings don't matter. Whatever comes up, meet it with kindness, not criticism. There isn't a perfect answer, only an honest one. I'll give you a little space. Whenever you're ready, let's continue. Chapter 5, the practice. I'd like to invite you into a short somatic practice. If you're driving, please keep your eyes on the road and you can simply listen. If you're somewhere comfortable, allow yourself to settle into a position that feels supportive. There is nothing you need to achieve here, nothing you need to get right. For the next few minutes, there is nowhere else you need to be. Take a slow, comfortable breath in and gently breathe out. Again, breathing in and breathing out. Now, notice where your body is being supported. Feel your feet against the floor, your legs resting beneath you, your back against the chair. Just for a moment, allow yourself to receive that support. You don't have to hold yourself up all on your own. And if it feels comfortable, allow your eyes to close or simply soften your gaze. Take a moment to notice your breathing. Don't change it, just follow it as it moves in and it moves out. Now I'd like you to bring to mind a very ordinary decision, not a life-changing one, something simple. Maybe deciding whether to accept an invitation, whether to change plans or even make plans this weekend, whether to take on another task at work. Choose something small. Now, imagine yourself saying yes. Don't analyze it. Simply notice what happens inside your body. Does your breathing change? Do your shoulders soften? Does your stomach feel lighter or tighter? Just notice. There's nothing to fix. There's nothing to fix. Now let that image fade. Take another slow breath in. Gently release it. This time, imagine yourself saying no. Again, don't explain it, don't defend it, just notice. What happens in your body now? Perhaps nothing changes. Perhaps you notice relief. Maybe you notice discomfort. Or maybe your chest tightens. Or maybe your breathing becomes even easier than it has been. Whatever you notice, simply welcome it. Now let both images drift away. Take another gentle breath in and out. Our bodies don't usually speak in sentences. They speak through sensation, through ease or tension, through expansion or contraction. The invitation isn't to obey every sensation. The invitation is simply to notice. Now place one hand somewhere your body naturally chooses today. It could be your heart, your stomach, your chest, wherever feels comforting. Feel the warmth of your own hand and ask yourself silently, what do I need today? Not tomorrow, not next month, just today. Then wait. You don't need to force an answer. Maybe a word comes, an image, a feeling, maybe nothing at all, and that's okay too. Sometimes learning to trust yourself begins by becoming comfortable with not knowing immediately. Stay with your breath, with your body, stay with yourself. Notice how often the mind wants to rush in with answers. See if just for this moment you can let the body finish speaking first. Take one more slow breath. And as you breathe out, allow your shoulders to soften. Unclench your jaw, even a little. And not because you're trying to relax, but because you've spent the last few minutes listening instead of arguing. Before we finish, I'd like you to remember something. Every relationship is built through moments of attention. The relationship we have with yourself is no different. Every time you pause before saying yes, every time you notice how something feels, or you honor a need instead of dismissing it, you're making a small deposit into the bank of self-trust. You may not notice the difference today or tomorrow, even next month, but one day you will realize something has changed. When life asks you a difficult question, you won't immediately look around the room for someone else to answer it. You may pause, you'll take a breath, and you'll quietly ask yourself, what feels true for me? Because the more often you listen, the more familiar your own voice becomes. Take a final breath. Notice your shoulders, your breathing, your jaw. And when you're ready, gently bring your awareness back to the room around you. Take your time, no need to rush. Because the person you've been learning to trust has been here with you all along. Chapter 6, Living It. Let's go back to Ambane. A few weeks have passed. Not everything has been resolved. He still loves Wanjiro, still loves his family. He still is still not certain what the future will look like. But something has changed. Instead of trying to silence the quiet voice, he started listening to it. One evening, he asked Wanjiro if they could go for a walk. They wander through the same park where they've spent so many Sunday afternoons together. For a while, neither of them says very much. Eventually, Ambane stops. He takes a slow breath. I need to tell you something. She turns towards him. He can feel his heart beating faster. His hands are cold. Every part of him wants to avoid this conversation, to tell everything's fine, to keep everyone happy. The old Ambane would have done exactly that. Instead, he says, I've realized I've been saying yes because I was afraid of disappointing everyone. He looks down at the ground. I don't know exactly what I want yet, but I know I can't promise you a future while I'm ignoring myself. There's a long silence. Wanjiro doesn't interrupt him. When she finally speaks, her voice is gentle and she says, I had wondered. He looks up. She says, I could tell something wasn't sitting right. Then she smiles, not because she's happy, but because she's relieved. Thank you for being honest. They don't solve everything that evening. There isn't a perfect ending. There are tears, there are questions, there's uncertainty, but there's also something else. There's truth. And truth, even when it's painful, has a way of creating space for something real. As Ambane walks home that evening, he notices his heart is still heavy because his future is still uncertain, but his body feels different. His shoulders are lower, his breathing is steadier, and not because that his life has become easier, it's that he's no longer carrying the weight of pretending. Sometimes trusting yourself doesn't make life more comfortable, but it can make life more honest. And honesty has its own kind of peace, right? And I wonder what that would look like for you this week, to trust yourself in one small way. And not by making a life-changing decision, but by telling the truth. And perhaps the truth is something like, I'm tired, or I need help, or I'd rather stay home tonight, or I don't know yet, right? That admitting, even that admitting, that's simply admitting, I really don't know. That too can be an act of self-trust. Because trusting yourself isn't about having all the answers. It's about believing that your voice deserves to be heard. When it shakes, when it's uncertain, when no one else agrees, it deserves to be heard. So this week, before you answer someone else's question, pause, take one breath, and ask yourself one of the simplest questions we've explored today. What feels true for me? You don't have to act immediately, and neither do you have to have everything figured out. Just begin by listening. Every time you choose honesty over habit, choose curiosity over approval. Every time you choose to stay with yourself instead of abandoning yourself, you're quietly rebuilding trust. One conversation, one breath, one choice at a time. Chapter 7. One thing before you go. Before we say goodbye, I'd like to leave you with one final thought. There are people in your life who know you very well, people who love you, people who want the very best for you. Listen to them, value their wisdom, learn from their experience. They're sometimes able to see things you've missed, or they'll ask questions you didn't know you needed to hear. But remember this: no one else wakes up in your body or carries your dreams or feels that quiet sense of peace or an ease that only you can feel. There comes a moment in every life when the decision belongs to you because your voice matters too. And maybe that's what growing really is. It's not about needing fewer people, needing less permission. So tomorrow or today, depending on when you're listening, when you're faced with a choice, large or small, pause. Pause before you answer, before you explain, before you look around to see what anyone thinks. Take a slow breath and ask yourself, what feels true for me? You don't have to rush the answer. You don't have to justify it. You don't even have to act on it immediately. Just begin by listening, because every time you listen to yourself, you're strengthening one of the most important relationships you'll ever have, the relationship with you. And here's something I'd love for you guys to remember. Self-trust isn't built on always being right. It's built on knowing that even if life doesn't unfold the way you hoped, you won't abandon yourself. You'll stay curious, learn, you'll begin again. Because that's what trust does. It stays. Thank you for sharing this time with me. And if today's conversation reminded you of someone who's always looking outside themselves for the answers, please share this episode with them. Please share my podcast with them. Share it. Even if they didn't remind you of anyone, share the podcast. Sharing is caring, people. Sharing is caring. Because also you never know when one gentle conversation might help someone find their way back to their own voice. So until next time, notice your shoulders, notice your breathing, unclench your jaw. And before you ask the world what you should do, take a moment to ask yourself, what should I do? This is Unclench Your Jaw with Nimu. I am Nimu. Thank you for listening. Take gentle care of yourself. And remember, less judging, more curiosity. Asante and kwaherini.